Welcome back to Legacy Leaders, a podcast where we talk about leadership, growth, and what it means to leave an impact. I'm your host, Juan Gutierrez.
I'm Ben Davis.
And today we're diving into a topic every leader faces, but few want to admit: courageous conversations. We've all been there, moments when it feels like easier to be silent than to speak up. But here's the question: can you truly lead if you're not willing to have that hard conversation? That's what we're going to explore today. What's your opinion on that?
You know, I think there's tough conversations to be had with everybody in our life, whether it's your kids, whether it's your spouse, your parents, colleagues, people you work with. You know, but courageous conversations start with being bold, right? And having the faith to say what you truly believe without being judged. And if you are judged, who cares? You know, so tough conversations start with being honest with yourself and knowing what you believe in and your convictions, I think.
You know, definitely, something like you just said, you're going to have those courageous conversations, those tough conversations throughout your whole lifetime, If you're a dad, you're going to have them with your kids as they're growing up, If you're a son, your dad's going to have that conversation with you. At work, you're going to have those conversations, or even at that, you're going to have conversations with your brothers, sisters, or even friends, If a true friend of yours is going to check your shit, it's going to check you. If you're doing something wrong, just like you have done to me, if you're doing something wrong, you're going to push that person to the side and have that conversation. Hey, bro, this is what you're doing, and get that information. Not be scared, If it's that true friendship and you want someone to grow and become better, you got to have those conversations with people,
That shows your love for somebody. It's not just taking the easy, cheap way out. So if you really love somebody, you have to be bold enough to tell them when they're messing up. Yeah. You got to be bold enough to say, "Hey, you need to change this behavior. You're acting like a fool, or you're being wrong." Or it's one of those things like your children, right? Like, we all want to love our kids, but our job is not to be their best friend. Our job is to parent them. It's to prepare them for the world. So when you have those tough conversations with your kids, for example, you really got to be bold and blunt, and sometimes you got to hurt their feelings, And there's nothing worse than hurting your child's feelings, but being honest with them shows that you can lead them and teach them and coach them to be the best kids that they can be, and grow into young leaders and young adults that impact the world around them, and not just sit there silently, right? Yep. One of the big topics on tough conversations that you got to have with kids, for example, is like on bullying. Yeah. When you talk to kids about bullying, it's like if you see little Johnny over there getting picked on, don't just let it happen. Yeah. Like, be bold, stand up for him, stand up for what you believe in, stand up for what you know is right. And that's where it kind of starts in those conversations, is practicing those from little kids, So a lot of people don't grow up with that mentality, or their parents haven't taught them that, to stick up for their beliefs and speak out on what they believe is right. So it's hard when you're 21, 22 years old, you've never seen that role model, and now you got to go out in the world and people are acting a fool, and then you see it and you just shut up and take it. Yeah. It's crazy to me.
And sometimes when that happens, a lot of people step on you because you're not willing to speak up and have that conversation with someone, or sometimes you don't have that conversation with people, so they keep on doing it, and they just make their life a little worse than it is. An example, me doing all these, being addicted to drugs and all this stuff, and no one having that hard conversation with me. And what was I doing? I kept on doing it until one day, they had the conversation with me. Hey, you're messing up. You need to change your life, and realizing that not having that conversation led me to be alone and go through all those problems that I did have, instead of someone just been straight up with me. Hey, get your shit together, and realize, but sometimes, depending on the person, some people don't really care what you have to say. They're just like, "Oh, this dude's just jealous," or whatever the case may be, and they brush you off instead of thinking that, "Hey, I'm trying to help you. This guy has, he's hating on me." But sometimes it's more of how your emotions are, I guess, right? Your emotions and your attitude of how you take that kind of conversation.
But you got to be able to lead those conversations courageously and not just be an asshole about it. You got to be very blunt and very, very real, but you don't have to be a dick just to get your point across. Yeah. It's a matter of being able to connect on that human level. One of the episodes we'll go into is emotional intelligence later on, and we'll kind of hit on that, but it's really being able to put yourself in their shoes and an empathetic leader. So it's not about, "Oh, you're messing up," and just being a dick about it. It's about wrapping your arm around someone and say, "Hey, I care for you. That's why I'm having this tough conversation." And on the other end of that, if you don't have those conversations, do you really care for that person? Because you're just enabling their behavior at this point. You're not checking it. You know, you and I have a friend, you know, or a close person in your life, and you know, I'm close to him too, not as close as you are, but you know, this guy, I mean, he's like that. You know exactly what I'm talking about. He's a very bold person. He don't care what you think. He's gonna tell you what he thinks, you know, and he doesn't care about your opinion of him. But it's good because you don't have to guess where he lands on anything.
Yeah.
There's no guessing where that dude lands.
Yeah.
He will tell you flat out, like, this is my belief, this is what I believe in. And some people interpret him to be an asshole. You know, and some people are like, man, what's that guy's problem?
Yeah.
It's not that he has a problem. He just refuses to let people walk on him.
Yeah.
And so he speaks his mind, and he has tough conversations, and he's bold in his convictions and what he believes in.
Most definitely. Can you give us an example when you had to have a tough conversation, or when you avoided maybe a tough conversation, bro?
You know, tough conversations are every day for me, whether it's my kids, my spouse, you know, you, or my friends or colleagues. I think a tough conversation is always something that people shy away from because they don't know how to navigate them. Yeah. You know me for a long time now, and this is a skill that you have to learn. Yeah. It's not something that you just pick up and you're like, oh man, you know, like I remember when I used to have tough conversations in the beginning, man, when I first started managing people, like I would get butterflies, I get nervous, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna throw up, I don't feel good, I gotta go fire so-and-so. Now I sit down, it's like, it's easy, it just comes easy because I understand the difference of it being a tough conversation and me wanting to talk to somebody and pull their head out of their ass because I give a shit. You know, so if it all comes from the heart, those tough conversations become a little bit just more realistic and authentic. You know, we talked about authenticity in some previous episodes, but, you know, I think a tough conversation, like I said, when I fired you, for example, that's a tough conversation. You knew you were fucking up. I knew you were fucking up. You know, but it was the hardest person I ever had to fire because we had a close relationship. I didn't want to go in there and fire you because I care about you deeply. But on the other side, it's like I also have a job to do, so I got to let you go because this is what's going on. But, you know, that tough conversation, you go into conversations like that, and you have to kind of walk yourself through it. You know, you can't just jump in and ad-lib. You can't just wing it. You can't shoot from the hip on conversations like that. You got to know what direction you're taking, because if it spins off in the conversation, you need to know how to pull it back, you know, and draw it back in, especially with someone that might be making excuses or someone that could be just bullshitting or thinking you're attacking their character. Like, look, I'm not attacking your character. I'm telling you these things because I care about you, and what can I do to help you reel it in, you know? So that's just a couple of examples, but, you know, there's tough conversations every day, you know?
Yeah, most definitely, you know. It's something, like you just said, it's hard, you know, to be able to have those tough conversations. When I stepped into the management role, it was something that I would avoid. I remember I would always come to you and say, hey, bro, can you go talk to this person? Hey, we need to go sit down with this person, because I was scared to go have that one-on-one with them and have that conversation. You know, because maybe I'm gonna say the wrong thing, or maybe they're gonna take it the wrong way, and then it's gonna start that conflict. You know, like you said, you know, when we had that sit down, when you fired me, you know, it was a tough conversation. But at the end of the day, when you understand when you're in the wrong, you take it and you're like, okay, it is what it is. I accept my full on, you know, mistake, and you own up to it. And sometimes those tough conversations that we think it's going to be a tough conversation ends up being the easiest conversation ever.
Absolutely.
You know, because you owned up to your mistakes. Like, hey, you know what? You got to fire me. I know you got to fire me. I know I messed up. You know, it is what it is. We move forward from this, and we'll figure out what goes on next. You know, but sometimes we have that. I guess we play so much scenarios in our mind that we start creating all these things. If I say this, he's going to say that. And if I say this, he's going to come back with this response. And then this is where the problem's going to be. And sometimes that causes that fear of us having that conversation. It's that fear of conflict, the fear of being disliked, or the fear of saying something wrong sometimes. You know? And
fear of conflict is a very real thing. There's not a lot of people that are courageous enough to go out there and search for conflict. But I think if you stick to your integrity, we talk about integrity a lot too. If you stick to your integrity and you just do the right thing, those tough conversations get a lot easier, because you know that you didn't put them in that position. They put themselves in that position. You know, so if you can hang your hat on that at the end of the day, and you can sleep and lay your head on a pillow knowing that you did the right thing, it doesn't matter the result or you building those scenarios, because no matter what they come up with, their excuses, whether they own it or whether they blame you for it, it's not going to matter. Because if I have a tough conversation with someone, let's say I have to fire somebody. Do I have to fire them? No, they fired themselves.
Yes.
They knew the rules. They went against the rules. And so I'm not going to sit there with the anxiety and all that pent up energy and what if. That's not fair to myself to do that, right? And as a young leader, I did. We had a lot of HR conversations when I was younger, and I would go in, like I said, palms sweaty. Oh, I got to fire someone. Oh, that sucks. They have 3 kids. Well, yeah, they got 3 kids, but they knew damn well they had 3 kids too before they did whatever they did.
Yeah.
So it's really just the accountability and integrity to do things the right way. And that goes back to the disciplines we've talked about, like Kobe Bryant having discipline and why would I give you the ball? I see you show up to practice every day. I see you on your phone. I see you late. I see you take off the first one out the gym. So taking that same mentality into your personal life and your work life is what creates that ability to lay your head on a pillow peacefully at night, knowing that it wasn't you that caused those problems.
Yeah.
You can check them. You can have that conversation, but it wasn't you at the end of the day. You're trying to help them and have those conversations is really about trying to help people get better, right? Because we've also talked about not everyone's perfect.
No,
we all need second chances. So it's wrap your arm around people, say, hey, man, you effed up. Like, let's fix it. And then if they own it, help them fix it. If they make excuses, move on, call a spade a spade.
And I feel like it's in the world we live in today, everybody takes everything too personal. People want to take it to heart instead of, it's going to build me up. Whatever they tell me, they talk to me about, it's going to build me up. But people want to take it personal. He's attacking like you said, attacking my character. He's attacking me. He's attacking what I do. So I feel like that's what creates a lot of conflict when you go have that tough conversation with someone. Even though they're wrong, they're still going to argue with you because they want to get their point across. Like, no, you did this. And I'm talking about personal experience. I remember when I would have to go sit down people and tell them, hey, you know what? I'm sitting you down because you did this and this and that. Mm-hmm. No, well, you did this. I was like, okay, we're not. Or this person, they always want to bring someone else into
They always bring someone else into it.
It's like, well, he does this. I'm like, well, we're not talking about him. And I learned that from you when I sat down with you and you would have these conversations with people. Well, we're not talking about him. We're talking about you.
We're addressing your issues right now. Not the third party, not somebody else. Quick go-to for people that are having those tough conversations. If you're on the other end of a tough conversation and, like, say it's a disciplinary conversation or a discussion that we have to have, like an HR topic or something, people are always going to compare to other people. And I've told you many times in our friendship, our relationship, but the comparison is the thief of all joy. Right? So if I start wondering about what this person's doing or that person's doing or this person's doing, I'll never be happy. I have to own my own integrity, show up, do the best of my ability, and hang my hat out on that at the end of the day, and that's what we got to do. But we are a society that constantly looks to other people and their successes and their beliefs and their morals, and you got instant gratification from all the social media platforms and stuff like that. So it's only natural that these people in the society now are comparing themselves to other people. But you see a 60-second clip that's been edited. Yeah. You don't see a whole 45-minute, hour-long interview.
Yes.
And then you can use deductive reasoning, and you can think about what you want to see. Now that people are manipulating the way that people think, and they're taking short clips and stuff like that to really drive conversations. They don't have the backbone to have the tough conversations. They just want to take snippets and manipulate the conversation to their point of view, or make it the opposite of their point of view so that they can argue it.
And there's something that you can't avoid, and if you want to be a great leader, you got to learn to have those tough conversations with people and not step back from it and know exactly how you're going to say things, and what you're saying to a person is a big part of it. You got to understand what you got to say, because people can take it a different way, and you might be like we said in these episodes, it's not what you say, it's how you say, and some people take it the wrong way, and then a big old conflict starts. People start trying to have that arguments. And like I said, I know from personal experience when I first started managing, I was trying to sit down these people, and then they start doing all this stuff. And all you want to do is have a conversation, trying to tell them, hey, you know what? I understand, but I just got to coach you on it. People don't want to be coached that sometimes, people take it, too hard.
Yeah, and sometimes they take it to heart, and it's on them, and sometimes it's on us, right?
Yeah.
One thing I've coached you on over your career, too, is sometimes it's not the message, it's the delivery.
Yes.
Like, hey, you had the best of intentions. Your message is there. You're asking them everything the correct behaviors or what you're looking for or what your expectations are. You're putting it out there, but the way you're delivering it is aggressive. You need to dial it in. You need to do it from a care and concern standpoint, not a aggressive standpoint, not a, I'm angry at you standpoint. It's a, hey, come here real quick. Let me teach you this. Let me show you the why behind this, or I care about you. So let's approach it this way. So a lot of times it's in the communication. That's interpersonal communication skills, and that's something that's learned as well.
Yes.
The more you have tough conversations, the more you deal with those things on a daily basis, whether it's an HR issue or coaching and directing people, the better you get at it.
Yes.
And that's in any field. I don't care if you're a lawyer having a tough conversation with your client, or maybe you're at the courtroom,
yes,
battling it out. Those are tough conversations. Or if you're a doctor delivering news, someone's got a illness that they're going to pass away with, that's a tough conversation, yes, right? Or if it's your kids, disciplinary action because they did something they're not supposed to do. People that shy away from that stuff are doing an injustice to themselves and the people around them and the community, because they're raising people to not hurt feelings, to not have those. So you take into account all the world events and everything going on currently, yeah, right? Like you got the school shootings, you yes, got ladies getting stabbed on the subway, you got, yep, the Charlie Kirk issue, yep, getting shot. If you look at what that guy did, his whole point of Turning Point USA was open dialogue and conversation. He saw a need for us to come together as a country, right versus left, left versus right, religious, whatever it was, and have open dialogue. And one of his biggest points that he made that I happen to agree with is that when communication stops, human connectivity stops. Yes. And then that's when violence comes in, yep, because it's tit for tat. It's two wrongs don't make a right. Yep. So we can have a conversation, and you and I can disagree on many things, whether it's political views, whether it's religious views, whatever, but we can have an open dialogue conversation, respect each other's opinion, and move on from there,
Yeah, most definitely.
And keep that respect.
Yeah, so, yeah, like you just said, that all these events going on, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, it's an opinion. At the end of the day, it's an opinion. We all got to understand it's an opinion. Even if we have a conversation, that's my opinion, or that's his opinion of what he thinks. Okay, I respect it. I move forward. I don't gotta argue with you. I don't gotta fight. And at this point in my life, I learned to just stay quiet sometimes. It's like have the conversation with the person, and
yeah,
just let that person release what he has inside. Because sometimes that's all they want to do is let go of everything that they have holding inside currently. You just let them release it, and then afterwards they feel better, and you just move on with it. And let's talk about emotional intelligence, attitude when you have these courageous conversations.
Emotional intelligence is that connectivity, and it's the empathy to be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes and have a conversation without getting upset about it, right?
Yes.
One thing I've always told you is going from 0 to 90, yeah, you don't see clear. You can't have an emotional, intelligent conversation if you're pissed off, right? Yeah. So you gotta be inquisitive. You gotta ask questions. You gotta be able to slow down. I did that little short earlier this week. Yeah. I put that out on emotional intelligence, EQ versus IQ. Yeah. And emotional intelligence plays a huge role in success, period. Yes. Because it draws into an empathetic leader, and how you and I can have a conversation and keep our respect as human to human connectivity versus me getting pissed off and be like, oh, I don't agree with him. He's wrong. I don't like that guy. We can still have mad respect, mad love for each other and agree on nothing. Yeah. Right? Because you're a human, I'm a human. Yeah. I respect your life. You respect my life. Whether we have differences in the way we live them or not, doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's a respect for life, period. So I think that a lot of times people fall into that trap of, oh, I'm right, you're wrong.
Yes.
Well, who dictates who's right and who's wrong? What's the dictator of that? You said we all have an opinion. Yes. We do. We all have an opinion. And opinions are formed based off of life experiences, yes, right? And different things that have happened to us. And you don't come from the same place I come from, so how is our opinions going to be the exact same? Yeah. They never will be. You've had your different life experiences just like I've had mine. Yes. And that's when you start to learn. But when people understand that, they're able to use cognitive reasoning, and they can think for themselves and not just be like, oh, I'm like this because I was raised like this. Yeah. We talked about it in other episodes, like girls walk around like, oh, I'm a bitch, that's who I am. Yeah. The world shouldn't have to conform to you because that's what you believe. From an emotional intelligence standpoint, we got to be able to pause. We got to be able to listen. We got to be able to think. does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know, or yeah, I can see where they're coming from. I don't necessarily agree with it still, but I can understand why that perception is there.
You know, and like you said, of that emotional intelligence, you know, being able to stay calm and listen. You know, like you just said, when I first started into my management roles, I would go from 0 to 100. I'll start going like, hey, no. And I wouldn't be able to have those conversations with people, you know, and I would get into a bunch of more conversations with people, and then we would have to go sit down together with them and go have this conversation with them, you know, and afterwards I had to understand that I got to stay calm, listen, and know exactly what I got to say, you know, understanding that part of it and understanding them too as well, you know, like say, hey, I understand you, you know, but we cannot keep on doing this in this establishment, you know, say, we have these rules that the business has made. We got to follow the rules. It's not my rules. It's the business rules. And we need to go with these business rules, you know. And being able to listen is something important. We said it all the time, you know. Sometimes people just want an ear to listen to. But, you know, having the empathy in that and those tense moments and showing compassion to people sometimes gives sometimes. And you showed me it, bro, and I've seen it that you fire people and people thank you. Because you fired them.
People will shake my hand at the end of firing them, you know, and it's unreal sometimes. But when you know the message you're going to try and convey, and then they can see your point of view, you give them the space to say whatever they need to say as well. At the end of the day, they understand because, like I said earlier, I don't fire you. You fired yourself. I'm not going to just wake up today and be like, you know, Juan, I don't like him. I'm going to fire him. You know, there's a reason. There's a reason. You know, we got a term, coach them up or coach them out.
Yes.
You know, coach them up is my priority. After I hire someone or after I have a relationship or after I've extended my hand to you, I owe it to you as a human being to give you the benefit of the doubt. That's why, as a compassionate person, I get burned a lot. Right? Because I put my heart out there for everybody to break it. I trust you until I don't trust you. You know, and that's the thing with me is I'm going to give you my full respect and my full integrity until you give me a reason not to give you that respect or that trust.
Yes.
You know, and that's why it's such a big thing to me because I give it freely. You know, you don't have to earn it. You don't have to beg for it. You don't have to ask for it. I give it to you automatically. I walk up, hey, my name's Ben. Boom, I trust you. Now, if you take advantage of that, you know, I got a long fuse, but it burns hot. When it's done, it's done. You know, you break that cardinal rule with me. I said it before. If I can't trust you, I can't mess with you. I can't work with you. I can't rock with you. I can't do nothing with you. If I can't trust you, that's it. You know, so you burn that trust, that's it. But those courageous conversations that have to happen, emotional intelligence is a huge part of that. You know, interpersonal communication. One thing I used to coach you on it too is like, you know, different people talk in different mannerisms, body language, you know, like you're a very animated speaker. You like to move your hands a lot. You can even see it on this podcast, you know, your hands flying around and you get passionate about something, you start going, right? But not everybody receives that well. If someone's coming from a background of, say, like a domestic violence situation, you know, you start moving like that, they stop actively listening because they're like, oh my gosh. Every time you move, they start flinching and twitching, right? So it's hard to have those conversations unless you understand what you do. So recording yourself, listening to yourself, getting feedback from other people, that's an important part of communication. I used to tell you, for example, because you are an animated speaker, right? And you like to get loud, and you like to talk fast, and you like to move a lot. I'm like, dude, try sitting down. You're going to move less. Sit down. I'd tell you, and then I'd tell you, hey, intentionally, just talk slower, you know? Talk slower, talk lower. So bring your tone down. Slow it down a little bit. It's a little less aggressive. You can still convey your points, you know, and that's a huge thing, you know, and so understanding that, having conversations and know what you're going to say, plan it out, man. Don't just wing it, you know, have it structured, you know.
You know, and you just said, you know, I talk very slow now. Before, this is not the way I talk. I'll talk very loud, hyped up, hands in the air, throwing up gang signs and stuff like that, and people would run away from me because my hands would be all over the place. But think about this. Would you rather protect someone's feelings in the moment or their growth in the long run? You know, that's something that's very impactful, you know.
I think I'd rather protect their growth in the long run, you know, and that's the whole point of those courageous conversations is wrapping your arm around someone saying, hey, I care. That's why we're having this conversation. Because you can fix it right now. If we let it spiral out of control and I'm protecting your feelings and don't want to hurt your feelings, you might spiral out of control and then it's too late. And then we don't have a relationship, or we don't have a job, or we don't have a whatever it is, because it's already too far gone. Like I didn't get my arms around it before it got too big. You know, I think a lot of times with certain situations like HR issues, this is a big one, right? Like people are afraid to have the little conversation, so then it keeps spiraling until all of a sudden it blows up in your face. Instead of saying, hey, come here real quick, I saw that. Let's have a conversation about that. We don't do that. That's not going to happen. They're like, I didn't see it. They turn a blind eye to it, and then all of a sudden it, boom, blows up into something big, right? So no conversation is too small to be had, I don't think.
I think during our careers together, we've seen that happen a lot. While we were at work and stuff, seeing those little small opportunities to be able to coach, not being coached, and afterwards it became a bigger problem for us to be able to attend to later on because they didn't want to take that second. It just takes a second sometimes to be able to pull someone aside, and coach them, and like you said, coach them up, coach out. Coach them up and tell them, hey, you know what, this is not what we do. In this here, we don't do that. This is how we do it. Those are the rules. We got to abide by the rules. There's rules in all over the, in the United States as well. We got to follow rules. If you don't follow rules, what happens to you?
Yeah, I mean, even those conversations, even with your spouse or your kids, like if you don't correct your kids' bad behavior, it becomes a normal behavior. So if you see something, you have to say something. So that's something we talk about. If you see something, say something. If something's not right, you stand up for what's not right, and you address it right then and there with a sense of urgency. You don't turn a blind eye like, nah, we're good. We talked about a previous episode, if everybody had that mentality, like I might take this water bottle and throw it on the ground, and it might not matter, right?
Yeah.
But if everyone had that same mentality, the world's going to be trashed.
Yep.
So we have to have integrity. Like you drop a piece of trash, pick it up. You see your kid acting up and doing something wrong, correct their behavior. You're upset about something your spouse did, instead of harboring animosity, have that conversation. Like, hey, you did this the other day. I didn't appreciate that.
Yes.
So maybe you didn't know that it upset me, but that's something I can't stand behind that upset me. We can't be having that in our relationship. So, and at work, little things like we talked about HR issues and stuff like that, but that goes back to, the conversations. Like it's not just work related.
Yeah.
It's everywhere you're at. It could be your friends, it could be your family. It could be someone, like say you got two friends and one of them doesn't like the other friend. All of a sudden they're talking smack about your friend. It's like, dude, that don't happen with me. I don't care if they're here or not. Like, hey, you can take that elsewhere, man. I can't respect that.
It's okay. So how do courageous conversations impact trust on your team?
I think to hold each other accountable, you have to be honest, right?
Yes.
So courageous conversations got to happen every day.
Yeah.
And people are going to take it personal sometimes.
Yeah.
They do. They take it very personal. I get this all day, every day in my job, and people are afraid of the accountability. But once you realize you're on the same team, pulling the same direction, it's not about me versus you. It's about us together being better than yesterday, or we're going after this goal. You should be able to hold me accountable too, right? I'm the guy that runs the building, but people hold me accountable too. If they see me do something, I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. That's not right. Got it. Check. So, and you should be able to hold those around you accountable on your team. And it doesn't matter if you're direct peers, side by side, equals, lateral. It doesn't matter if you're holding someone accountable below you or even people above you. If you see people above you doing something that goes against your integrity, that's that courageous conversation to step out of the box and challenge them and say, hey, that ain't me. That's not going to happen. And I think a lot of times people are afraid to have those conversations, especially with their superiors. Yeah. That's a hard one. When you call out your boss, that's tough for a lot of people, but you stick to the black and white, stick to your heart, stick to your integrity, and expect the highest of everybody, whether they're below you, next to you, above you, doesn't matter.
And some people, like you just said, avoid having that tough conversation with your boss, but sometimes your boss appreciates it. It gives them more respect towards you, and, and looks at you at a different way, because there was times where I would have to do, we said it, we got that friendship, but if I seen something you doing, like, hey, bro, what's going? Come on, bro. What do you think? And I would have that conversation with you, and people would look at me like, "Damn, that's your boss." I'm like, "Yeah, bro, but we're a team. We're focused on a goal. And in order to us get on this goal, we can't be doing those type of things, Like,
exactly.
Hey, let's focus on getting better. But what's the hardest conversation you've had that you avoided?
For me, my hardest conversation is with the person I'm closest to, probably, right? And that's my wife. Yeah. Those are always the hardest conversations because we don't always see eye to eye. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, we have the same goals. It's raise our children. It's to make them beneficial to society and teach them good morals and values. It's to take care of each other, life and death. So sometimes my hardest conversations are with my wife, and it's not necessarily I'm afraid of what she's going to say or what I'm going to say. It's how it's going to be received, or how are we going to move forward and make a decision if we don't agree.
Yeah.
You know, because somebody's got to give. Like, if you don't agree in that relationship, that's the most sanctioned relationship you'll ever have, is with your spouse. You know, and so it's the hardest one, because no two people are alike. I don't care how close you are.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the toughest one. It's like making decisions about your children, you know, your housing situation, your work situation, if you're buying a car, you know. So you have to understand how to have those tough conversations. So that's the hardest, courageous conversations for me. You know, it's with my wife personally. My second hardest conversation with those probably is going to be with my kids, because it's a more personal relationship. You know, you have friends and you have people that work with you, and you have all these people around you in the world. And it's easier because at the end of the day, you don't go home to them.
Yeah.
They're not at your house. They're not in your safe space. You know, but your kids and your spouse and the people that live with you, those are harder conversations, because you can't just turn it off. Like, you got to go to bed at night. You got to sleep with them. You got to eat with them. You got to breathe with them. You got to live and die with them. You know, so those are the hardest ones. When it comes to work people and stuff like that, it's a little easier for me. Like I said, I just stick to the integrity. You know, when I was young, it was hard because I wanted to avoid those conversations because I get nervous, like I said. You know, and what do they think about me? And if you're holding yourself to your highest integrity and your highest discipline, those conversations are a lot easier. So I'd say definitely my kids and my wife are the hardest ones.
How would your leadership grow if you had that tough conversation each week? You just finished with that one. It's hard, but
it is. I think, you know, silence, like, just like Charlie Kirk was saying, right? And this goes for, I don't care if you're debating on college campuses like he was, or you're talking to people at work, or even at home. You know, silence kills marriages. Silence kills relationships between parents and kids. You know, when you fall off and you don't talk, that relationship is severed, and the trust is starting to falter and gets broken. You know, so those conversations at home should be had, and they should be planned, you know, and that's something I personally could do better at. You know, I'm not great at it. You know, I'm an out of sight, out of mind kind of guy. When I'm at work, I'm at work. When I'm at home, I'm at home. We've talked about that before. You know, I need to be better about intentional conversations with my kids and my wife, and sitting down and saying, hey, every Tuesday night we're doing a family meeting. You know, you ever have family meetings as a kid? Man, never. I used to. My dad would pull me in. All right, family meeting. He'd get my stepmom, he'd get my siblings. We'd all sit down. We'd talk about what's going on for the week, what we're doing after school on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, what the expectation was as far as chores. You know, but that gave us structure. That gave us the expectation for the week. But then we were all on the same page, too. You know, it's kind of like at work, we do these things called directionals. We do meetings, you know, on a weekly basis, so that we all know what the goal is, what we did great last week, what we need to do next week. So I structured my work life like that, but my home life, I could be better at that, you know, so I would like to change that.
You know, being courageous, because courageous conversations don't just change teams, they change leaders. Thanks for joining me today on Legacy Leaders. Remember, leadership isn't about the easy moments. It's about having those courageous conversations and leading with purpose. With that one, we're out.
Later.